Oh, shoot.
So essentially, there's a couple of bits I wanted to talk about that over the past few days have really gripped me. And normally, I'm not in for just discussing things that annoy you because that's not always a kind of a good platform to start things from.
Sometimes it's helpful. Yeah.
However, because
Go
the
ahead.
gyms have reopened and people are looking at changing their bodies for the new year, there's been so many like offers and sales and people coming out and showing what they can do. And it just reminds me for the gazillionth time that the barrier for entry for fitness is so low. And that on its own isn't a big deal. But are we working health and any other aspect of health where we're modifying somebody's body in any way requires so many protections and kind of like certifications, because the body's so important. And yet, for some reason within fitness, we're okay to be like, oh, did you do a weekend course that didn't involve a test? Fantastic. Just take this person. Now you're in charge of making sure their spine works okay. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
We'll
yeah.
just load up their major joints, and if there's a problem, it's okay. It'll only ruin the rest of their life. And I find that if this was anything else that involved dealing with people's bodies where you could affect them permanently, there'd be a lot more protection in place.
Yeah, so much has changed. Like I didn't, I guess my baptism into the fitness industry was like a level two fitness instructor, like health and
Hmm.
fitness coach. And part of that was anyone that joined our gym is they had to go through like a health MOT in air quotations, but that involved
Yeah,
at least showing them a few bits of kit, like just seeing how their body moves. Because
yeah,
you know that the majority of people, they don't really have any kind of kinesthetic awareness. You'll ask them to flatten their back and they're folded. Like people will take for granted that people just have this ease and this ability to tune in with exactly what they want to do. But the truth of it is especially people where they're so motivated and have aspirations on changing their health and everything else is they go into a gym, hell for leather, they've signed their waiver, which
hmm,
a lot of, especially budget gyms, that's all they're concerned about because that just means they're not liable for anyone doing any harm. They go for hell for leather and then wonder 3 weeks down the line why they're not warm to exercise, why they're not motivated to train, and actually maybe it's comfortable and easier just to go back to how I was.
I think that like this time of year, there's so many people that motivate me personally, aspirational people, people that want to make a fresh start. And as someone who's been in this for basically my whole life, sport and training my whole life, I find this time of year particularly motivating. I love
Mm,
seeing people out running on the roads. I love seeing new people in gyms. As a coach personally, me and Sky were talking about this. I do have now, I suppose, a handful of what you might describe as the elite athletes, the people at the top of the tree, making some money out of it. That being said, I believe my biggest strength is in introducing people to fitness. I really enjoy
mm,
people's first day in the gym. I really enjoy their first time they pick up a barbell and seeing that they can do it. And you've kind of like unlocked a level on their computer game for them what they didn't know existed. And they're like, oh my gosh, I can do all of this too. That's my kind of passion. So I love this time of year. But as I say, like on social media, and this isn't hacking against social media because I love social media too. Um, but you're just seeing these adverts come out of people now, and it's their time to shine, I suppose, as their new PT level twos. And I want to bang my head against the wall a little bit. Like, it's great to support your friend who's becoming a PT, but are they becoming like, are they passionate about this? Are they dedicated to fitness? Are they dedicated to encouraging you to change? Do they have the skills that not only support you physically, but also mentally through that journey? Like there's a lot of part-time PTs, people who just think it's an attractive job. I spend a lot of time in the gym, so and now I'm going to be a PT and help my friends with it. But they haven't gone through the hoops that are required to show knowledge and understanding of what they're about to deliver to you and the impact of it. And for me, it's as simple as this. Like I work in the CrossFit space, which gets enough bad press as it is. But just remove that and just say that within CrossFit we do say Olympic weightlifting and compound lifting. To me, that's the loading of the spine, loading of the major joints. If I'm going to trust somebody to load my spine repeatedly, that thing that keeps my nervous system safe, I'm not going to give it to my friend just because they passed a weekend course. And I'm not going to give it to them just to encourage them because they really enjoy spending time in the gym. It needs to have a level of professionality to it. And it needs to have somebody that thinks that health is their career.
mm. I think part of that is juggling this perception that the consumer has of what a health and fitness profession is, but also what a health and professionals perspective of that is. So like, there is a glitz and glamour attached to being a coach, I guess. And as you say, like a
Yeah.
lot of people assume I love training, I must be able to train people. But because, as you say, the barrier to entry is so low now, the consumer has this expectation of, well, this person I trust implicitly because I assume they have got credentials. I assume they have got experience.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, not a lot of people ask those questions. I don't think I've ever been asked those questions. Or if I am, it's once in a blue moon. Is normally you go about inadvertently without trying to brag about it, but almost like assert your level of experience or what credentials you have done, almost like for reassurance for the consumer. But I think, as you say, because the barrier to entry is so low, a lot of consumers just naturally, they think people have these things. And because of that lower barrier to entry, coaches coming into industry don't do their due diligence. They don't go through the process of earning their stripes because it is easier. You know, we could talk about the positives of having that low barrier to entry does open up possibilities for more people, but also the propensity of injury occurrence and things like that is going to be greater because, you know, you don't need to do a level 2, then a level 3. You don't need to do a certain number of years experiences. You can go in, do a weekend course, which is online as an online coach, and sign up and be an online coach. So oh, what's happened there? He flips upside down on me.
Oh, a little bloop.
That's all right. I can talk to you upside down if you can manage it.
Am I upside down?
Yeah, I've got like vertigo. You flipped.
Oh my gosh. That is not good at this end.
That's all right. It'll make funny images to share at least. Because I think I was having a similar conversation with Sky. So a lot of people use this. I think we've had a chat about this as well. Use the term coaching interchangeably, but there's a distinct difference between coaching, which is aligned with someone's personal values, getting to know them on an individual level, and essentially what a lot of people deliver, which is here's your training plan, here's some macros, follow that, crack on, or I'm going to hash together a session as quickly as possible with a certain sequence of exercises I know which is particularly challenging. I'm not going to base that on the person's level of ability. I'm not going to do any kind of health and safety check. Are they injured? Like, can they deal with these movements? Have they got the ability to even move their body in this way? And crack on. And again, it creates this monster that just eats itself. And I don't know what the answer is, because although the fitness industry doesn't have like a real regulatory body, who could you trust with that anyway? Who would you trust implicitly?
I think though,
you put in charge.
I think though that when it comes to, say, for example, if you looked at, for me, the lowest common denominator training, like the bottom of the barrel, and I don't even mind slating it, but the people who simply just sell booty training, they're like so into aesthetics. They're not even into like general aesthetics, overall aesthetics. They've refined it all the way down to just booty training because we can reduce people to whether they have a nice arse or not.
And just my glute med. I don't want the rest of it, just my glute med.
Exactly, right? So say we reduce it just to those people who specialise in only working your arse. Your hips, as I say, are attached to your lower spine. Like in doing just booty training, you can destroy someone's lower back. And we all know what it's like to have lower back pain. You get a back spasm for a week or two and you're off work. You lay horizontal and that's you. You're not walking. You can't sit down comfortably. You can't drive. You can't pick anything up. You can't go to the shops. So even if we take it to like the simplest, or not even simplest, but lowest common denominator of training, then there is huge risk involved in that. And I don't know those people. It's like just trying to, like, I don't know what's the word for it, raise alarm in people. That's not what I'm trying to do. But what I feel like at the moment, what's really gripped me this week is this idea that there needs to be a greater depth of training and understanding before you start, plying your wares as a personal trainer. Mm-hmm. And until that day occurs, I'll feel uncomfortable calling myself a fitness professional, because ultimately a fitness professional is anybody who decides to label themselves as such. To me, I describe myself sometimes a strength and conditioning coach, as a gym owner, because I find that at least holds a little bit more value in my own head. Mm. Because the barrier, say, if I say I'm a fitness professional, that includes me with 27 people who can't talk their way through, I don't know, the basic anatomy and physiology of a human, and I just can't cope with it. So for me, like this time of year, what I'm saying is there's so many positives. There are so many people who are now excited and good to go. And I suppose that's the same with personal trainers. But it's been griping me. I want people to have more self-respect than to just go into training people without having done the work.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think a lot of that comes from just essentially making it more individual focused. I mean, I think if everyone went in with that attitude rather than this is what I learned on my course, this is ticks the boxes for everyone. I think when I did my ACSM level 2 when I was 19, and I distinctly remember the person delivering the course like, that the crunch is the best exercise you can do for your abs. It's a blanket term, and I just, at 19, I just accepted that as gospel. Like,
Yep.
obviously,
Yep.
you do your reps and you find out and create your own. Like, but you've got what's being delivered. You've got people that accept it as gospel. I also think, unfortunately, we've got parts of the industry that know better and choose not to do better because they know better, but they also know what is easy to sell. They know when people are easy to capitalize.
Yeah.
They know, if you've earned a certain amount of clout as a fitness professional, I don't know, like specializing in fat loss, for example, is that I can get a certain number of people signed up to this low barrier to entry program, and I can give them a fairly generic program. I can give them some calorie brackets maybe to stick to. And that's going to get a large percentage of them some initial results, which essentially what they want. But whether that's what they need longer term, they're not really interested in, because what they were expecting is repeat business. And this is where I think the line gets blurred. Like, don't get me wrong, I do think you can be, a very successful business person, but ethics and business, there comes a blurred line where I think essentially is you need to stick to your guns. And this is just my belief, which, by the way, is my opinion. It could be perfectly wrong. Plenty of people will probably disagree with me, where you've almost got to compromise a little bit either on your personal ethics and what you want to get out of people and how much money you want to make. Because a business as a standalone is solely based on bottom line, like how much money are we making? Like you saw this a lot with, I think, body positivity movement and more inclusion in like models and athletes and things like that. Is they all go in when it's on trend, but when they see it affecting bottom line, is they change their mind, which kind of,
I think like what's really interesting is I've done this with the gym. I've had to do this with my own gym. There are things that I put in there because I know they need to do that, whether they kind of like it or not. And I owe that to them because they've trusted me with making them healthier. So I'm going to make you do this, whether you like it or not, because I am a true believer in this methodology in like strength and conditioning. So you're going to deadlift. You might not like deadlifting. You might do a variation of deadlifting, but there will be some deadlifting in there. And the same might be said for squat and press, because I just believe that's necessary. And that's been, from a degree at 18 to 21 years old, all the way through till now, I've brought this knowledge together, and that's what I believe. So there's things that people don't like, but at the same side of time to time, me and Lee have talked about when we do programming, we should put this and this in because they really like it. Do I think it's the ideal thing? No. But do I think that them enjoying themselves is a key part of their keeping their motivation up and keeping them happy? But also, there's a consumer thing. To keep my business running, to keep people coming to my gym and being successful customers, they have to enjoy the product which I sell. It's all well and good having the best product, but if nobody likes it or wants it, then it's actually the worst product, because economics is economics. And it's exactly like you were saying. It's walking a line between what you know they need and what they like, and trying to find like a compromise where your ethics aren't, you as a person, your ethics, you as a professional aren't compromised, but you can at least give them something. Like, so for example, I'm sure you've done this a million times where I bet you from time to time you've been like, you know what, with this person, they've come to lose some weight. There are different ways of doing it, like maybe a very purist fashion that you would like to do. But you know what? I'm going to give them a little initial help here to get some moving off them, so that they get a little bit of motivation from that, and they know they're on the right path. And would I say that's compromising your ethics? I would say no, because they've come to you for a reason, and they will go to somebody else. And at least with you, you have 99%. Of the purest method in your core, and you're happy to give away 1% from time to time if it means that they stay with someone who has their best interests at heart. And I've said that to Lee, losing people from our gym because we don't give them a little bit of what they want to go somewhere that doesn't have their best interests at heart would be a tragedy for them and for us, I think.
Yeah. I think from a place of personal disclosure, I'm totally on board with you there. Again, this is where coaching and the art of coaching comes in, I feel, is if you're conversationally having these discussions quite openly with people. So it's like that informed choice thing is, we're going to do this to get this. So you're managing expectations, but longer term, this may be of benefit to you, or for sustainability, this is going to be. Yeah. So you're kind of outlining the purpose in which you're doing something. So I remember, because I was very much a purist. When I was in uni, I did some PT, and then I came out and did an internship at Saracens Rugby Club. And being such a purist is exactly as you said, like on a Friday, the players would have arms. And I'm this really naive kid, basically, and I'm almost questioning the psychology of it. Like, why would the S&C coaches be programming arms? Well, because the psychology of
Yeah,
it is that important, and they programmed arms on Friday because that made the players look good, feel good, and that made them
yeah,
adhere to the rest of their program because almost they look forward to that at the end of the week.
hmm,
And that, as you're cultivating that art, is you get more attuned with what motivates certain people. And I think actually getting to the point I was meant to get to is when you're working with so many numbers of people, and the sole intent is just to get them through the door, and you're giving them bare minimum. The expectation
yeah,
across the board becomes bare minimum. So when
mm,
someone does go to, I'm not even going to talk about me. Someone goes to Sky, for example, which may not
hmm,
know what she's about, or to you, and they kind of expect just the plan and just some guidance around their nutrition. They have a certain figure in mind in terms of investment. Yours is likely going to be a lot more. Sky's is likely going to be, but mine might be. But because the expectation is so low, it doesn't
yeah,
benefit anyone. So people get poor experiences where they're not really managed or
yeah,
coached because their coach actually doesn't get to know them. Their perception of what they're supposed to get is just a plan and that's it. And then, broadly, people see how accessible that is, and people earning 10K a month, other coaches like the glitz and the glamour, I can train, maybe I can earn that amount. Well, I'm just going to give people a training plan. That's it. And I'm going to charge this amount.
yeah.
I'm going to sell that to as many people as possible because I've got a certain number in mind to earn. And yeah,
I
it
think
ends up
the
being
second
quite a
side of this is like,
self-defeating circle.
I think the second side of this, the other side of this is, people going to gyms for the first time and stuff, and we can talk about like low barrier to entry in terms of like the coaching side of it. So what they are delivered. Sorry, but I find another interesting perspective is how we look at various types of fitness and various ways of expressing your training interests. And this is where I think there is no low barrier to entry. You can't make it low enough for me. And we were talking about this the other day. And obviously, I do CrossFit. I do that kind of to an elite level. I like to heavy barbells, and I like to train people with a similar mindset. We do fairly disgusting workouts from time to time. Everyone ends up on the floor. Like, it's fairly niche. I think that's an understatement of the century. The kind of training we do at Gritstone is very specific to a group of people who like a certain feeling. That
How
being
great is
said,
it for
someone,
camaraderie and community?
yes, well, for me it's ex-military, so it's for me it's you find your team and you find your people and you find your closeness with people with a level of shared discomfort. um I would prefer to train for a short period of time. So if I'm going to, like, conditioning wise, I don't like going out for 2 hour runs. I don't like doing cardio for hours and hours and hours. So if someone says to me, would you like to do 12 minutes but it's going to be absolutely disgusting, or would you like to do 2 hours but it'll be nice and gentle, just I want to do it in 12 minutes so I can go and lie on the sofa. So that kind of conditioning suits me. So, when it comes to, there's that saying, we had a new coach a few years ago, and he was, I think he was kind of rinsing like, Zumba and spin class and stuff like that. And I said, I will get on board because I do think, watching some of these classes nowadays, watching aerobics class to me seems a little bit silly. But I don't think it is silly though. I don't think by any means it's silly. And I think the lower you can bring that barrier to get people started moving is better and better and better, because we all started there. And I was saying, I used to do fitness classes in the RAF, and we did a lot of circuit hit classes at lunchtimes, and we used to do a really good spin class after work. And you could knock out like 2 spin classes back to back. And I was like, I'm so good at spin class, I can do 2 back to back. These days, I'd say if you can do 2, then the first one wasn't very good. But that's only kind of like my snootiness that's appeared over a career of training. I don't really mean that. That class is so good that someone wants to stay and do it again.
Yeah.
Like, how brilliant that is. And I think that this time of year is great to see people just take on the class that you want. So it doesn't
Mm.
have to be the biggest, shiniest thing. And it doesn't have to necessarily be the most, what's the word for it, necessarily the most effective. Pick the one you think you can do, the one you think you can enjoy, and then dive headfirst into it, unashamedly.
You mentioned something really, I think, important at the very start, as you were saying, it's that can do. People need to be able to prove to themselves that they can do something. And that means setting themselves up for a
Hmm.
win. And enjoyment is such a fundamental part of that, because hopefully, I don't know whether it's just my echo chamber, that elitist side of absolutely hating workouts. The number of people I will speak to this month that say, I've picked up running because I want to get fit, but I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
If you hate it, like there's so many other things you can do to get fit, like
Yeah.
enjoyment in terms of adherence and, sticking with it
Yeah.
longer term is such a fundamental part of it. So don't go with things that you hate doing. Sure, there's going to be workouts once you're more experienced that you do hate, but initially it is going for a cup of coffee and a long walk with a mate. As you say,
Yeah.
a spin class, a Zumba class, a water aerobics class, like whatever it may be, ping pong, I don't know, but you've got to enjoy just moving your body. And I think certainly with age and wisdom, that's something I now realise a little bit more. But again, like the struggle I find in January is because people are of this mindset. It's almost, they associate pain and suffering with getting fit because of how things are marketed, with the moody music and people sweating and
Goggins.
Yeah, and like if you're not crawling out the gym, basically, you haven't had a good workout. And understandably, people like being comfortable. They don't like feeling horrible, so they're not going to put themselves that. And you will know with your BJJ experience as well. There's nothing quite comfortable when someone's trying to force basically a rubbing of their boobs in your face, man boobs, that is.
Yeah, getting crushed to death.
Yeah.
I think when we program for CrossFit at Gritstone, I think this is a really, really funny thing. You were saying before about the things that people like and the things that people need. If I programmed a end yourself workout 6 days a week, they would absolutely love it. They would love it.
I would love that title, end yourself.
Like honestly, right? I would be for 4 weeks. I'd have packed classes, except then after the fourth week, I'd have nobody in class because they'd all be crushed. And the thing that I have to sneak in, that you think, oh, what are the bits they don't like? Are the moderate intensity exercises. So the days when I say like this workout is moderate intensity, and then everyone pulls the pin and dies anyway. So then I have to write the next week specifically in such a way that no one can possibly go that hard on it. And then I have to tell the coaches, don't let them upgrade it. Don't let them make it go heavier. It has to be this. And I find it really funny that the mentality of the group that we've got, that they want to work hard so much that the thing they don't like is the day where they aren't a mess at the end. And it's like you were saying a second ago about like the bringing the two things together. It's not good work if it wasn't hard work. Like hard doesn't necessarily make it good. And we both know this because we've both worked, I suppose, equally on hypertrophy for a period of time. Hypertrophy is a strange mix where sometimes you will do sets to failure and it'll be incredibly difficult, but sometimes you work in a moderate to heavy weight for a comfortable number of reps and you just repeat it, and you repeat it for months and months and months until the body does what it needs to do. But they're not death sets. Do you know what I mean? For me personally, I don't bench press myself to death. It's actually in a space far more closer to comfort than it is to incredible discomfort.
Yeah, but it's like most things, we tend to enjoy the things that we're good at, and much the same as you, like conditioning wise, I much prefer shorter, more intense. But this year I've got a couple of BJJ comps booked, and we're extending sparring rounds out a little bit. So I want to do a little bit more zone 2. I cannot do zone 2 if I'm not wearing a heart rate monitor, because I'll train too hard. I have to make I have to visually have my heart rate monitor in front of me, and it starts ticking over 130. I'm like, okay, I need to rein it back a little bit because I can't do it without, but I find it incredibly boring. Yeah.
I think that jiu-jitsu is such a different thing. Conditioning wise, you can't disagree.
Systems, isn't it?
It just hits me in a different way that nothing else has. Like I found max heart rate there so many times, and I'm barely moving. But the mix of adrenaline, the mix of fear, the mix of excitement, I suppose all those things, then with the physicality explains it. But recently I've been doing, me and Sky have been doing rolls for the 5 minutes, and I've been working much more on my defense. So I sit down and spend the first 2 or 3 minutes just trying to defend. And then when I'm ready, step forward into some sort of sweep or wrestle up or whatever it is, and then go from there. But the goal is to spend that first 3 minutes just breathing. And I'm starting to put rounds back to back and starting to get much more training in over the same given period, where before I'd roll a couple of 5-minute rounds and then I'd be absolutely dead and I couldn't get any more done. And that's I suppose like it's learning to put that put the same training into a more moderate intensity by slowly calming my emotional side rather than trying to calm my physical side. Because ultimately, you're not doing a lot when you're on the bottom. Sometimes you're on the bottom, you're holding positions, and you just glancing off someone's crossface, whatever it is. But when you're learning that first 6 months, it feels like you're fighting for your life. It feels like you're trying to survive drowning.
Yeah. Kind of
Very
a
interesting.
alluded to when someone's trying to, I guess, like force a motorboat on you by like essentially laying on your face.
Yeah,
Because you just like, as you say, when you first start, you're just like desperately seeking little pockets of air just to
yeah,
stay
yeah,
alive. Whereas I think once you get in, obviously with the experience, you get in more comfortable positions. And okay, this is uncomfortable. I've got someone's full body weight on top of me, but I know they can't progress from here. I know I can hold this
hmm
comfortably. I know I can conserve my energy. And if it isn't too cheesy to say, I always think of that BJJ for me is the physical embodiment of almost emotional intelligence because you have
hmm
a choice to meet someone where they're at because we've all got gears we go through, right? So if I was to compare it to having a row with someone, and we're all roll with that one person that likes to escalate things a little bit. So you have
yeah,
the choice to meet them there. This is going to likely result in a bit of a scramble. Possibly someone's
yeah,
going to get injured. Possibly egos are going to be involved, or I can pacify this somehow, and I can just maybe this is
yeah.
part of it as well. The dominance of that is actually being able to control yourself, control the other individual, bring that back down to a pace which is comfortable for both people to learn from. And I think about that a lot more. I think a big shift for me in my jiu-jitsu was when I stopped going into sessions, sparring sessions especially, and thinking about winning.
Yeah. Oh, mate. Yeah.
I wasn't, I think there is a shift where I don't have need to fight for my life anymore because I trust everyone implicitly. Accidents happens, but if someone gets me in a nasty position, I trust everyone in the room that, they're not going to crank it on. I'm not going to bust me up.
Yeah.
They give me opportunity to tap, but also let's just try things. Like I haven't got to win, if someone slips a knee on belly, okay, well that didn't work. Maybe I'll try positioning something elsewhere. But yeah, just going in with the attitude, I don't need to win. I don't always
Yeah.
need to win, and that's helped me keep my ego in check a little bit as well. Because
I think you're absolutely right. Like you couldn't. That is. I'm saying new jiu-jitsu just as you are, but equally in fitness, it's the same. The idea you can win in training, as soon as you can get rid of the idea that training is competitive or that training is against anybody else, bizarrely enough, the more you'll flourish. And you see this with the most elite athletes, people like Chris Bumstead, or in the bodybuilding world. Say you look at Tiger Woods, when they just forget that there's other people involved, and they just they look at their path, and they don't look at it necessarily selfishly with blinkers on, but they look at their path in isolation and just say, my development will be my development. Then
mm,
you see people's very best sides come out. And I think that for me, I say being new to jiu-jitsu is the same in the sense that, those first 2 or 3 weeks, like being thrown around a bit feels personal. The sooner you can realize nothing's personal, everyone's just on a journey of like learning and progressing. So as you say, I'm in a role, I try something, it doesn't work, someone takes my back. You just got to laugh and shrug it off and then go from there, because that's all you've done is try to learn something. But also, you've got to kind of think more of your teammates than to think they're particularly bothered, especially if they're better than you, especially if there's some higher belt. Okay, they took some newer guys back. Like, yeah, they probably should. Um, but I don't think they're chalking up a win when they get home. They're not going to get like open a diary and start saying, "Yeah, I got Richie's back this week." Then no one's bothered. And I think again, like this is something I got told by a colleague, and it's something I refer to a lot when I talk about like my mindset. But a colleague in the 16-hour assault brigade, the parachute regiments, once said to me, "You'll do well when you realise no one cares about your feelings." And it sounds incredibly harsh, but what he was saying is I like you as a person, and just assume that I like you 24/7. But when we're in this professional environment, all I care about is the job that I need to do and the job that you need to do
mm,
to get us where we need to go. And he said, so when you realize that in that moment, no one cares about your feelings, it's both in a good and a bad thing. Like if you get some negative feedback, don't take it personally. I like you. Just take it exactly as it is. Make the correction, be better. And equally, if you get a massive pat on the back for doing something great, don't think that means you're the best bloke ever. We've liked you before, we like you now, but don't let it go to your head. It's just, these things happen. And I think on the mats, it's probably very similar in the sense of, you'll do well when you forget that people, when nobody cares about your feelings. They don't. They're doing their own training. they're not tallying up points, and you're not tallying up
Mm.
points. You're both just trying to progress through this journey to a place where being smushed, having your face smushed to a mat, is not a possibility anymore. Where being safe is a place that you can consistently live. Because when I look at the higher belts, especially in our club, I look at some of the senior purple belts and brown belts. What I see is that they are rarely in those uncomfortable places unless they want to be. And I'm
Mm.
really jealous of that. Imagine being so well equipped that you don't have to be in a bad position. That is unreal.
Yeah, I think that's where, as with most things, if you're invested in personal mastery, then you can choose when you put those in positions. Because, as you say, like, what's the worst thing that can happen? But you're solely invested on bettering yourself, and that's it. So no one's going to do you any harm. But at the same time, I think there's just such a mutual respect I find between people rolling. Because I know when I roll with more experienced guys, is if we're drilling, if we're doing like some specific drilling, they're letting me do that. You know,
Yeah.
they're allowing it. And if I choose to escalate or I choose to take the piss because I might be more physically capable of them, they're going to remind me who's in charge. And I try and take that almost into, rolling with lower belts as well. It's just that mutual level of respect. And again, while I take it back to the emotional intelligence element of it, when I talk about compassion, that's essentially what it is. It's looking at things objectively and broadly. And I think when that's applicable to so many other aspects of life, like, comparing yourself to yourself, what is success to you? What is happiness to me? That to me, developing these inner resources, this is something I'm certainly focusing on this year, these inner resources and listening to my own intuition and turning the volume down on everything else. Is you come from such a better place because it's not ego driven. You're not seeking external validation. And I find for me, I don't know, I'll be interested to get your thoughts on this. I find almost when I introduce competing to that, it makes it something else.
Yeah.
It makes it.
I think business is an interesting one for this. Business, because we obviously run our own individual businesses. When I look at my CrossFit box in terms of competition with other CrossFit boxes, how successful we are, how many members we have, who's got the best results and stuff, that's some of the least enjoyable times of running my own business. And it's also the least successful times because basically, like, the best game I can play is my own game. Do you know what I mean? We develop, just like we do in jiu-jitsu, just like we do in fitness or whatever we're doing. You have your own strengths and weaknesses, and you need to learn how to play with them. And for me, say weakness wise, is sometimes like, I'm really glad I have Lee with me because I'm quite a direct coach. I suppose I'm quite like I suppose how is it? I don't know how would I frame that. Lee is a democratic coach. He's a backwards and forwards coach. You talk to me, I talk to you. So am I, but I want your feedback, but I want it so I can help deliver you to where you want to go. And often I ask my athletes to trust me a lot. I'm like, just trust me with this one and go with this feeling, go with this feeling. And that type of coaching I think is quite challenging. It takes a certain individual to who's also quite robust. And we just kind of, that's the way we do it. I can't really explain that. But if I try and run classes like other people do, they're crap. I can't be that kind of super, like one of the coaches that I used to know that I look up to, good example, Carl. Carl used to get everyone's hands in the middle at the end of a session and they'd say 1, 2, 3, whatever it was of the day. And it might be a really motivating word like effort or motivation or whatever it was. To me, that's so cheesy. That being said, I used to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I can tell you now that people would join in the first 2 or 3 sessions and think this is really stupid. And then within 6 months, they were such a part of that group that it meant something because it stopped being cheesy when you started believing in it yourself. Like, what word are we going to take away today? What thought are we going to leave this gym with today? And what are we going to carry with us for the next 12 hours? And that's what they'd say. Or if it was someone's birthday, they'd say their name and say, remember, it's Thingy's birthday today. All day, remember, we're going to have good intention towards him having the best day ever. Now, personally, when I first started, as I say, that was cheesy. And the longer you went on, you thought, just a wonderful way to live your life because you knew he meant it. Now, I tried to do that for a short period of time and it didn't work. Why? Because I'm not in that same space. So it just fell flat and it was rubbish. And all of a sudden, business isn't going well. But when you run it on your own terms with your own strengths, then all of a sudden you start to do well. And I think that so many small business owners need to do that. Stop looking at what the competition are doing in terms of how can you beat it, be inspired by it, Allow it to lead your understanding of trends and fashion and interests, but don't allow it to change fundamentally what it is you want to do or achieve, because beating someone else at their game never, ever works.
Yeah, yeah. You can only be yourself, and that's the only good job you can do, I think, when it comes to that. Because I think, like, without again, without being too cheesy about it, that is essentially when people talk about authenticity. That is it. I and the art of coaching is the combination of the two. Because when I talk about coaching, is I think it's such a personal thing. You can't help but bleed into everything that you do
Yeah.
because it involves everything in your personality, not just facets of your personality. It involves you. So how you talk to people, how you deliver things, like how you meet people on their terms in terms of communication,
Mm-hmm.
it's all of you. So for you to withdraw any of that or try to emulate someone else, I think, again, you can look to social media why there's so many carbon copies of other people because they're trying to emulate someone they look up to, which again, as you say, like, don't get me wrong, you can use that as something to be inspired by. But when you're trying to be someone else, it's almost inauthentic authenticity. And, people try to buy my blueprint to building your social media following. Well, you built your social media following based on you, your personality,
Yeah.
how you deliver things. There are certain things you can't emulate because they're so distinctly personal to you. And I find, especially with business, that's so true, especially in the health space as well.
The only thing you've got is yourself, and if anything, the more unique you can be, the probably better it'll go, because how
Mm,
you distinguish yourself will be a greater sales tool than how you align yourself, I think, with other people. That being said,
mm.
um, I was thinking the other day about Sam Cornforth. I don't know if you see him on social media, but he's from Whatever It Takes in London, and he started doing videos during
Yeah,
lockdown,
yeah, I've
and
met
now
someone.
he has these massive like deals now with large companies and large corporations who support him. And that's a journey there that, like, I get so inspired by. It doesn't make me want to go out and start recording reels in that sense, but I love that, like, exactly that. He's pursued himself, separated everyone's kind of opinion and ideas, and been like, no, I really think there's something here, and I really enjoy doing it. And I
And
said to him
taking
one
it
time,
on
like,
the
how long
next
does it
along the way.
take?
Oh,
It takes him like 7 or 8 hours of editing on his phone, like
yeah,
on his phone. But he loves it. And for me, that's like the perfect example. Every time I see one of his videos pop up with an even bigger supporter or sponsor, do you know what I mean? And I
mm,
think that's another step on the journey of being a professional. I just think, mate, like, I love it. I think you deserve it. I think I'm excited by it. I'm interested in following it. And more importantly, like, I'm inspired by it. It makes me want to go and do my thing.
yeah, yeah. I think there's something that really resonates about that story of essentially someone that's been knocked back so many times, and he's very candid, very open about it not always working out. I think that's really admirable as well. But as you say, he's just pursued it, carried on being himself, doing it in a way which works for him, doing it in a way in which it doesn't feel like work, which sometimes can be a bit self-defeating with work when you're not always feeling you're at work, because you can work yourself into the ground. But yeah, I like those stories, but also because
For
that's so
me, for my Instagram,
shared.
go on,
Sorry.
carry on. Go on, carry on. Sorry,
No, I'm saying because
I
they're so
interrupted.
tangible and shared as well. I think a lot of the success in the health and well-being space is the way it's discussed sometimes is like, I've done this all on my own and I've gone from zero to and this is how you do it. Whereas we miss out survivorship bias, we miss out luck, we miss out like
Yeah.
legs up people get along the way as well. Is I'm all for people celebrating their successes, but just give the truest reflection of how you've got there. So
I'm gonna I'm gonna do like a gripe here that's gonna be like, I'm gonna feel sick whilst I give this gripe.
go
So,
on, shoot.
like, my social media got from about 0 to 20,000 based on just CrossFit performance, just training in the gym every day, posting it, going to comps all over the United Kingdom. I'd compete 20 times a year, and as a result, it grew with people that were just like me. So it was me talking how I want to talk to people that were just like me, and I absolutely adored it. And then from 20 to 40, kind of got bigger through international competition and sponsorship stuff. And then that was still me. I was still doing lots of talk to camera stuff and every day kind of putting my life up there. And I also went through depression at that period. And I was unafraid about posting about that because I suppose I just didn't have a filter really. I had a level of unawareness. And so still the relationship was quite, what would I say? Like, I suppose my the relationship between me and my followers up to about 40K was really quite personal. And people still do, but people would quite often there come up to me, whether I was in a competition or like at an event, and they'd talk to me about their own personal journey and they'd relate to me. I'd often get tears in my eyes where someone had talked about something I'd said and I'd be like, wow, I can't believe I spoke about that so openly. But at the same time, this person was sharing that emotion with me and I was like, this is 100% worth it. This is exactly, I suppose, what it's about. And that's why I quite like social media. About 12 months ago, 18 months ago, something happened where a couple of my posts got caught up on some explore page, I don't know where, and now my account has grown to just under 70,000. And I have to say, like, I'm beginning to, I told you it's a gripe that I feel a bit sick saying, but I'm really not particularly enjoying a lot of the new followers in terms of their engagement because it's not authentic and I don't know what to say to them, if you know what I mean. So all of
Yeah.
a sudden I feel like there's much larger audience of people that I don't really understand and I feel a little bit judged by at times. And as a result, I feel myself less interested in posting authentically about what I am doing and what's happening. Because I feel like before I was sharing bits of my honest life with people who cared about me and who I would probably speak to at an event sometime soon. And maybe that's unrealistic with 20,000 followers, but I didn't feel it was that way.
Right.
Whereas now I feel like it's full of strangers at the window and
Mm.
I'm not really comfortable with them. And it's meaning that I'm far less keen at the moment to share those kind of like natural aspects of my life because it no longer is natural. Do you know what I mean? It's taken on
Sure.
a life of its own. And I think that at the moment, me and Sky was talking the other day about like, I don't know what to post sometimes. Whereas
Mm.
before, I could just put a picture up and just say something about my day and just say like, I'm having a really good day today and this feels good. And, or I could say I'm having a really shitty day today and this isn't feeling great. And my Instagram was my journal and it was so healthy for me. I really feel like my social media was a healthy journal because no, it's not totally uncensored, but it was
Mm.
a great way of me considering what do I feel and how am I going to deal with it. And sometimes I'd say like, if it felt down, I'd say I felt down, but then I'd say, you know what I'm going to do though? I'm going to make sure I do this and make sure I do this, I'm sure that'll help me get back on track. And then I felt I owed it to myself and to other people then to actually do that. And it was like a really good journal to keep me on the straight and narrow. Whereas now, with it growing the way it has recently, and me not really identifying with it, I'm not sure sometimes what to say.
Mm. That's really interesting. I can't imagine that, but I imagine. Look, I always think with vulnerability, there's a certain amount of vulnerability that needs to be reflected back for it to be truly vulnerable. And I don't mean like sad fishing, like vulnerability porn that you see a lot of people do for the wrong reasons on social media. But it sounds like there, because there was that authentic connection there, because you had people sharing quite intimate, I guess, things with you as well, or at
Yeah.
least the things that you were saying resonates. Whereas I don't know, there is, of course, there's this parasocial thing on social media where everyone is so accessible. Is some of the people that have found you likely are only interested in surface level stuff, and I wonder what
Yeah.
it is. I wonder what it is about you personally which struggles with that. And that's not as a slight. I just think that I don't know. Like my personal belief is something I found as I've got older, especially as a man, is that I've got less time for superficial. Like I
Mm.
just I want honest connections with people. You know, I'm really grateful to have met you and had a chat with you before. I didn't really see your social media before then, and you know, again, I know you
Yeah.
won't take that as a slight. It's just there's so many people to follow, etc. And I had a chat with
But
you
now though,
before
like,
I came with you, and I'm glad that
but
I.
2, 3 years ago, I'd have been proud of you if you'd gone through my social media. I'd have been very proud of what you might have seen there because you'd just seen a lot of the real me. Whereas at
Hmm.
the moment now, I feel a lot more kind of like, oh, don't go
Do
straight to
you
my
feel like
social
you
media.
have to be, do you feel like you have to put up a performative front? Do you feel like people have expectations?
It's not performative; it's just select. So
Mm,
I'm really aware that at the moment, my Instagram is only a select series of bits and pieces from my life because I
yeah,
really feel like it's strangers looking through my window of my flat. Otherwise, I
yeah.
feel like, and I feel like the window is too big, and I've like,
Is that because you
I've said
value
out loud,
privacy? Maybe because you're so much more content in life is, you know, with
it's
doing recent
you just put your
engagement.
finger absolutely on it when you said vulnerability is
Oh, sorry, I've lost you.
Birthing involves two ways. And I feel that when I put something up that was showed a little bit of vulnerability, the engagement back would always be by compassionate, interested, engaged people. And so it was a pure kind of experience. Whereas now, put it this way, we can do an experiment on this. And maybe we should do an experiment. Maybe that's what we'll do. I'll get a picture from me, maybe on a family day. Okay. I'll take a picture and it'll be topless on a family day on the beach, just me in my swimming shorts. And then I'll follow it up with 2 or 3 pictures of me and Sky, me and Samson playing in the sand. And I'll put up something. I'll try and have a look through my journal and see what's going on, and I'll maybe put something honest down about, like, sometimes there are ups and downs, or like about a time I felt probably down. We'll see how long it takes for a guy to write "Daddy" underneath it.
Yeah.
Okay, and I find that it makes me just go, oh, that's awful. Like, you try and share something and then somebody just looks at the picture and goes, "Daddy," and I just feel sick.
Yeah. When you've just been objectified, is like, someone is solely seeing you as an object. Then they maybe, again, this is why people use social media. Some people only come to social media for that. There's not.
I find that there'll be that, or somebody will write something else, and I just find it, like, tedious and uncomfortable. And as much as you enjoy, I'm not in a world where I pretend that I'm on social media simply because I really enjoy people's emotional posts. I love that some of my friends are super attractive and pretty and sexy and all those things. And it's the same reason we said before. It's inspiring, it's motivating, it's also engaging. And why not have those aspects, all aspects of your life, like, shown out there? Sky is great. I've said this to Sky before. I love it when she posts, like, a picture just before she goes out. I know she's my girlfriend and I get to actually see her, but I think she looks so gorgeous sometimes. And when it pops up on my feed, I think that's my girlfriend. She's amazing. So she will post almost all nutrition content, and then doesn't like putting a picture up of herself looking really nice. But like I said to her, if you want people to see the whole 360 of your life, she will show them a picture when she's rough in the morning after a night out, which she did the other day, and I was like, oh my god. But then she'll also post all her motivated content of her training, and she'll post educational content. I said, why don't you post them those times when you look, I just think, you share that as well. Let people enjoy you at your best too. So I'm definitely not against that kind of, not objectification, that's the wrong phrase, that's a really negative side of it, but I'm not against, like, being aesthetic and putting aesthetic posts up. I just think it's a bit cheap that at the moment I find that anything I post, that'll be the response from an element of people, and as a result it discourages me to want to post in any sort of fashion.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
What I told you, it's like a hard story, world's smallest violin, but it's an interesting reflection I've had on social media.
Yeah, I'm always reflecting on my relationship with social media, because there's part of me that I can only be myself. I only appear on there as me. And I don't know whether it's like a rebellious streak. Is if there's a performative element, or there's something everyone else is speaking about, or there's something I feel I should be doing, I don't want to do that. So even like the kids stuff I try not to put the kids on there too much, partly because AI freaks me out, and I've seen some obscene things done. I don't know whether have you seen that AI model in Spain?
Honestly, yeah, the AI model thing blew my mind. We're not even living in the real world anymore.
11,000 euros a month. People know that she is not real. It's an AI creation created by a man, and they still sign up for their OnlyFans to basically see fake whatever. But knowing that, and knowing there's, in air quotations, sorry, I'm going to make it really dark now. There's how twisted certain people are, and in theory there are no real life victims, in air quotations. People can create whatever images of whatever they want, accessible to whomever, and that terrifies me a little bit. And I imagine anyone listening to this, and possibly you, your brain can go in all sorts of places with that.
I'm the same as you. Like, I used to post about my journey with Samson, and I actually put a post up about 2 years ago where I said, there won't be any more posts like this. Like, I've considered his part on my social media, and he's grown to a point where he won't feature anymore like this. because
Yeah.
people would come up to him at competitions and they'd know him. And I thought that was warm, and it is warm and friendly. But it wasn't necessarily because I was worried about him on social media. I thought it was about time to give him a choice. Up
Yeah.
to that point, Samson was posted on my social media as an extension of me. I posted about learning to be a single dad. I posted about how, I don't know if you remember, we weren't friends at the time, but when I first had Samson, I think he was between 10 and 11 months old when I started having him on my own. And I'd have daddy days with him. And I had 2 whole days a week with him. And then one day when my mum would look after him during the daytime, and I'd have him from the afternoon onwards. So on daddy days, I remember I had a long beard down to my chest. I had long hair like a Viking with the sides shaved out. I was about 96 kilos of all I did was pick up heavy weights. And I didn't feel like the world had been very nice to me at the time, because I've obviously split up my girlfriend and this and this, and very defensive. So I imagine I cut a fairly scary figure. And then I'd spend 3 days of the week walking around with an 11-month-old baby and try and make things happen. And I used to put it on my social media because, you know, I think that journey was again part of how my growth came, because it was just so honest. I just posted up like what we did that day. And I think that even like, I'd like put a nice shirt on and get ready and try and put him in matching stuff, maybe, whatever it was. It kept me honest and it kept me moving in a good direction. And I'd reflect on it just like a journal. I got to a point where I realized that I was posting him because it was an extension of me and what I was doing, where he was now getting old enough with his own character, own personality, his own expression, that he deserves to make a choice on whether he wants to share that. So I wrote a post and I just said, you probably won't see him the same anymore. And now I do Samson does appear on my social media, but he appears when me and him are out doing something fun that I think's appropriate. But he certainly does not appear for 99% of the time.
Yeah. I mean, like, especially, I'm always cautious of just the kids on their own and their faces. Like that's just my thing. But you know, with especially a following like yours, is there comes a certain amount of over familiarity, which can be nice, but also, I guess it can be quite scary. Like I don't have a huge following at all, but when I have been with my daughter and I've bumped into someone that I know kind of from a distance, more of an acquaintance, and they've greeted me like her name is, she looks like a little bit, how does this person know me? And I'm like, actually, they probably should know you. They shouldn't know you just from appearing on my stories. You're absolutely right with that. So it's a difficult one to juggle. And I think the other thing with social media is we're essentially trying to teach our kids how to manage this thing that we don't even fully understand, because we haven't seen the worst of it yet. And I love social media, but at the same time, I'm really cautious of it. There are certain elements that I want to, keep my life out of, not from a secrecy thing, but same as you, is just the access it gives people to you, is that if you share
wait and see, like you want to wait and see how it develops before you quite open it all the way up.
Yeah.
I think my interesting friend is my friend the other day at work. His daughter was being picked on Snapchat, and she's a few years older than Samson. And I was like, oh, mate. And he said, honestly, I want to go down the street and knock this guy's front door down where his daughter's bullying my daughter. And I said, how have you worked that? And he said, well, she's allowed Snapchat, but she only has 6 friends. And they're basically her direct friends from school. And she can't access any other people. There's no explore. Like, they can't find her. She can't find them. It's just so they can speak to each other and they can have this Snapchat. And I was like, flipping heck. I said, Samson won't be having anything until he's 25. And Mark said to me, he had the same conversation with his wife. But like she said, our children are quite innocent, and they're quite, I suppose, immature in that sense, that level of innocence that makes them a little bit, immature. And he said, what we decided upon was that she has, if we tell her she can't have it, when she's a certain age, she will arrive into social media with no skills and no awareness and no ability to deal with it. If we give her these bits and pieces to a limited extent, then she can start to learn and flex and figure out how it works. And like Mark said, her getting picked on now is exactly why we've allowed her to have it. Why? Because she needs to learn how to deal with that. That is her world. That is her future. Her future involves all of these skills. Like Mark says, I know how to deal with a bully in the playground. I know how to deal with a bully on the football pitch. I know how to deal with a bully in a pub. But I don't know how to deal with social media. She is of a world where these days a lot of youngsters don't even drink anymore. They don't go to the pub. She doesn't need those skills that I can teach her. She needs to figure out how she deals with someone being rude online and how she deals with someone doing this and this. He's like, this is why I've given it to her. And I found that a very, very persuasive argument, but also one that's really challenged my thoughts on it. Samson needs to have access to these things and he needs to learn how they work.
Yeah, I often think about that because there's certain experiences from my younger years that I definitely wouldn't want my children exposed to. But at the same time, you do want to cultivate some resilience in them. Like,
Yeah.
obviously we want to shelter them from the world, but at some point, the world is going to challenge them in ways they need to kind of be prepared for. So even if it's,
Yeah.
something as that or something fairly benign, like I'll often say no to the kids if they want like sweets and stuff, just because they should experience disappointment. Because if they're always going to get their own way, at some point later
Yeah.
in life, they're going to come up against something which they can't control. And if the expectation is they always get their own way, yeah, it's a really difficult one because it's like, how much do you expose them to? You want to
Yeah.
protect them. That's your
Is
duty.
it fair to say, like, I want to protect his innocence to a point? He's always this innocent and this bright eyed and this optimistic and this beautiful in his aspect of life. But at the same time, I have to realize I have to slowly challenge it until some of it's not there.
Mm,
And that is interesting. Me and my dad talk about this, and I said to my dad one time about me going when I went to Afghanistan the second time, and I came back. And Dad said you were very different then. You went away one thing and you came back a bit different. And I said I don't laugh the same anymore. And I mean that by the sense of when I was in my early 20s, like my sister will say, I used to be carefree and innocent to the point of reckless. I'd put myself in these positions where she'd be like, "Oh my God, what could have happened?" And I'd be like, "But it didn't happen. I had the best time ever.
mm,
I made friends with a million people and we had a wonderful time." And I'd laugh and be silly and very bright. And I think that was because my innocence was protected by such a wholesome family for so long. But then I came back from Afghanistan a second time and a few things happened and I went through a really difficult time. And I said to my dad, I'm as happy as I've ever been. But I recognize that there's an element in me now that has been exposed to the world where you can't you can't close Pandora's box. Do you know what I mean? I've seen things and I've done things now that mean that I don't have that total innocence and total, open-eyedness. I now check what's going on around me. I now see what's happening. I am a little bit suspicious. I am perhaps a touch cynical. I'd hope to the point where I do believe in people. And I know I do. I don't even have to say do I hope. I do. I'm a positive person and I always believe the best in people. And I hope Samson has that the same. But what's interesting is if I could protect Samson to the day he never had to lose all of that innocence, I bloody would.
mm. That's not the reality of the world, is it? But yeah, you're exactly right. I think there are just certain life experiences that change you immeasurably. You're a totally different
Yeah.
person after them. Some things which should harden you in certain ways, and they soften you in other ways. It's just
Yeah.
something you'll never fully prepare yourself for, because I do think, like all or anything that's resilience building, is you need to face it head on. You need to be immersed in it to actually find out how you deal in those situations. Because I think, I could use a really morbid example. My wife and I were talking last night. I was watching a program that we just started watching, and she's just like, "Oh, look, they're so inhumane. I don't think anyone could do that." And I think you don't know unless you've been put in that situation. Like this example was someone that never saw themselves as being able to kill another human being did end up doing this in this program we watched. And I just thought to myself, I thought, I can sit here, like, I consider myself a good human as never being able to do that. But then if your family were at risk and you had to, I know our circumstances are very different, by the way.
Yeah.
But similar to yours is you're put in a position where you don't have that choice. So actually, you don't know what you're capable of until you're there in it. And that's
I think we've talked about this a lot, me and one of my friends, Sean, and context is everything. Context is everything. Lord of the Flies. And I don't mean in a bad way, I mean in a good way as well. Like you can see incredible levels of kindness and compassion from some people that are probably the worst kind of people. But at a given moment, in a given context, you'll see it. And I think that in the same way, you can see that the very kindest people do things you wouldn't have imagined under given circumstances. And I find we've talked about it so thoroughly because I find, obviously having been in the military, things like that, like I do have an interest, but I like reading about war and conflict because I like this is exactly what we're talking about right now. There've been times of compassion and kindness in war that you just couldn't imagine, and happiness. And I mean, for example, just as a fun one, just as a general fun one, if you've ever seen the film A Bridge Too Far,
I haven't.
in the Second World War, the parachute regiment jumped into Arnhem, which was far behind enemy lines, and they jumped along a route that they were supposed to secure, and then the heavy armor and all the bits and pieces were going to cane down the road and then secure this entire route and this town at the bottom in Arnhem. The Paras jumped in to the furthest point, and then because of delays and other things that actually make it really dramatic and exciting, nobody came to protect them. And they basically, if you don't mind my language, had the shit kicked out of them for days and nights and days. And they were surrounded. They were outmatched. They were over. The weapons were bigger. The weapons were stronger. The men were more had more resources, and they basically just had the shit kicked out of them. But there's a really funny incident that actually occurred. They had a padre with them, and a padre in the military is non-denominational, but he probably was Christian. And at one point, one of the general had to cross a road to get information from one of his men to bring back again. And it's at the point now where even generals are running around, because normally they sit in a headquarters and make decisions very protected. But at this point, he literally was like, I need to go and speak to him to make information to inform my plan. And he's got the padre, and the padre's like, where are you going? And he says, we've got to get over there. And bombs are raining down on the road. Concrete's hitting the ground. Explosions are going off. And the padre reached into a shop window and he pulled out an umbrella, opened the umbrella and said, take a walk with me. And he and the general walked across the road. And the general reflects on it in his later biography and says, I would not do that a second time. I don't know what I was thinking. But the padre just looked at him and said, come and take a walk. And they walked across the road. And at the other side, he put the umbrella down and said, carry on. And they laughed about it. And it was a moment of like genuine, like hysterical laughter. And that was at the point where this entire unit were basically all facing death. Death was looking them in the face. People were dying around them. But even still, there are moments that break all of that. And you can power through with something. And I think that, like you say about this film, equally things can go the other way. Things I've seen. In the UK, you would not believe. You would pass somebody in the street, and you would not believe for a second what that person has done. And they've done it for probably all the right reasons, and contextually, they've done it at the right place and the right time. But at the same time, they've still pulled that trigger multiple times. I find gangsters funny when you see gangsters with the tattoos and the ballies on and the motorbikes and they've shot somebody, and I think that's weird because I remember there was like a 22-year-old sniper that I talked to a couple of times whilst I was on tour, my second tour, and he had a higher kill count than everybody else in his unit put together. He was way into the double figures, and he was 22, barely shaving, and he was a stone cold killer. And you see these guys driving around on ballies thinking that they're absolutely badass. And I think to myself, like, I've seen what badass is. I've seen what a really dangerous man looks like. And he actually looks like a perfectly kind of lovely individual.
Arguably like most of the blokes and women that come to the mats every time you train as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't go around bragging about that. Rich, we're going to have to leave that there, mate, because we're definitely so good. Your valuable, precious time. And I would love to do a part 2. I'm going to put this one out as soon as possible, but we're going to end it on that little story because there's so much I want to delve into there. And also, I have to take a picture of you upside down, so you'll have to forgive me. This whole conversation, you've just been still and upside down. And it's been incredibly hard to concentrate at times because you must think I'm like looking at your lips or something. I don't know. I'm like looking at your image at the bottom of the screen, but you've been upside down the whole time. Thank you so much for your time. Can we do another one?
No worries.
Can we put you on the spot?
Yeah, now? For sure. Please. I
Yeah,
find this so interesting. There we go. Thank you so much.
thanks, mate. And if anyone does want to check you out and put "Hello, Daddy" under your pictures,
Yeah, just go to Tricky Ricky on Instagram, and you'll find the person who really likes burpees.
thank you, mate. Let's arrange a part two.